Alright, so working some more with the imparfait based on some conjugation notes. Oops. Alright, so remember first of all that the imparfait conjugates from the new form of the present tense verb, not the infinitive. So we'll conjugate the verb in the present tense, find the new form, and then drop the O and S from the end of the verb to find the imparfait stem. Sometimes, particularly with ER and RE verbs, this is the same as the infinitive stem. Sometimes it's not, particularly with IR verbs and irregular verbs. There's not really a hard and fast rule to follow. It's just, it takes a little bit of practice. Every single one of our verbs will conjugate this way, even the irregular ones. If it's irregular in the present tense, we can still find the stem for the imparfait this way, except for être. Because nous sommes does not have an O and S to drop, it's the only new form in the entire French language that does not end in O and S. That means that we have to use a different stem for the imparfait. That stem is going to be E accent aigu T, so A. It's the only irregular one you have to remember in the entire language. Once we have our stem, the only thing we have to do is add our endings. The nice thing about the imparfait is that the endings do not change based on the verb category. So every single time that we've looked at our verb tenses so far, we've had one rule for ER verbs, one rule for IR verbs, one rule for RE verbs, a different rule for irregular verbs. That goes away in the imparfait. The stem can be difficult to find because you have to know the present tense, but the imparfait endings, it does not matter what category the verb falls into whatsoever, they are 100% the same across the entire language. It will never, ever, ever change. The je ending and the tu ending are both AIS. The il, elle, and on ending, as normal, the only thing we have to do is flip that S. We're going to change it to a T. All of these are pronounced A. So for example, if I use that E accent aigu T, that beginning of être, A, I'd say été, été, été. Nous and vous are extremely similar to the present tense. We're going to add IONS and IEZ. Il and L are fairly similar, but we have to add an extra letter in front, AIENT. Yes, that means that there is always 3 vowels in a row. Yes, that means that there are sometimes 4 or possibly even 5 vowels in a row. It's okay. Don't freak out about it, I promise. So, questions 1 and 2. What are the imparfait endings for je and for elle?
Ms. Stark, can you please report the office? Ms. Stark, can you please report the office? Thank you.
Feel free to ignore Mr. Pretz. Alright, so when we are conjugating, as normal, the only thing you have to do is find the stem and then add whatever ending matches the subject pronoun. So for example, let's start with a present tense sentence like j'ai 5 ans. So I'm 5 years old. I have 5 years. Because this is a description that we want to talk about, and because we are past 5 years old, we're all older than 5, we have to use the imparfait to say I was 5 years old, probably when something else happened. So we had to find our verb, first of all, which is our A, which is a form of avoir. So we know that our imparfait conjugation has to come from the verb avoir. To find our stem, first we're going to conjugate it in the present tense and find the new form, nous avons. Then we take that avons and we get rid of our O and S, and everything that's left becomes our stem. So avons minus ONS just leaves us with AV. So that's our stem. Now we just add the ending that matches je. So we just saw a minute ago that our ending for je was AIS. Ave. When we put this into our sentence, all we have to do is remember to contract our je and our ave, because of course ave begins with a vowel and je loves to contract. J'avais 5 ans. I was 5 years old. Be particularly careful with stems that end in the letter I. So for example, étudier. When we conjugate étudier in the present tense, okay, étudions, drop our ONS, we're left with étude, étudie. When we conjugate these into the nous and the vous form of the imparfait, students tend to freak out because all of a sudden there's two I's next to each other. It's okay. They are both supposed to be there. A lot of students freak out when they see it and they assume that they've done something wrong and they try to get rid of one of them.
Emily Paul, please report to the front office. Emily Paul.
Sorry about that, guys. Our I's are supposed to be there. Okay, so just leave them alone. I know it looks funny, but I promise you it is perfectly reasonable in French. Okay? Nous étudions. So, question 3. What would be the imparfait stem for the verb attendre? And finally, conjugate the given verbs in the imparfait. So if we wanted to use tu and jouer, you played, and il and faire, so they did.